will be visible on the research station's YouTube later this evening or tomorrow morning. All right, folks. So we're just going to go ahead and get started this evening. My name is Genoa. I am the student engagement intern for the Santa Rosa Island Research Station's speaker series this semester. This evening, we have the Channel Islands National Park Biosecurity Manager, Juli Matos. Is that correct? Wonderful. So thank you so much for being here. And then, of course, Russ, I'd like to pass things over to you. He is our director here at the research station.
For sure, for folks here with us tonight and on YouTube, welcome. My name is Russ Bradley. I'm the director of the research station program. Great to see people here. Great to learn about Juli's work and the great work that's happening in terms of biosecurity in the park, and also some opportunities for students potentially there that we're trying to get the word out on, and just also in general talk about our research station program. Literally today, we are finalizing with the Park Service policies that will allow us to return to 75% occupancy at the research station. So we have some folks maybe in some trips that are already planned up in spring. We have intensive summer programs. We have internship and volunteer opportunities. There are many different aspects across many disciplines that we work with here at the research station for those. So for those students out there, if you're very interested, you may see some opportunities today. You may want to reach out to Genoa or to myself. You can find on the website, and we're happy to talk to you about programs with your research station, which is this unique, only one of 11 in the United States in national parks, and our university has one. So take advantage of learning about opportunities there for yourself if you're interested. So thank you, Genoa. Thank you, Juli, and just happy to have everyone here.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Russ. And Juli, we're going to go ahead and pass everything over to you. I think you've got a presentation prepared for us this evening.
Okay, great. Yes, I do. Let me share my screen. And that should be working. Minimize you guys. Okay. Well, thank you so much for having me here today, and thank you all for coming tonight. And if you're watching on YouTube, thanks so much for tuning in. My name is Juli Matos, and I'm the biosecurity manager for the Channel Islands. And though I'm officially employed by the National Park Service, my position is jointly funded by the Nature Conservancy and the US Navy as well. So I do biosecurity work for all three agencies, which makes things really interesting. But before I dive into my presentation, I wanted to give you all a brief overview about the path that I took to get here. I went to undergrad at San Diego State and studied environmental science, and I decided to go straight to grad school. So I got accepted into UCSB's Bren School of Environmental Science and Management for my master's, which was honestly one of the best decisions I've ever made. I specialized in conservation planning, and I did the communications focus as well. And students are encouraged to do an internship between their first and second year. So I went to DC to work for the Nature Conservancy. I also might refer to them as TNC throughout this presentation, that summer between my first and second year. And for those that don't know, the Nature Conservancy is an environmental nonprofit that's worldwide. And if I'm being honest, it wasn't really my dream job. I realized very quickly that I didn't want to be stuck in an office all day, every day. But if it weren't for that internship and making a ton of great connections and being able to show my value to staff at TNC, I probably wouldn't be in this position today. This position was originally announced as a TNC position, and I was able to get that internal reference to vouch for me, which was really huge. So even though that summer internship turned out to not be exactly what I had anticipated, it ultimately led to a lot of really valuable connections and opened up a lot of doors that got me to where I am today. Okay, let's move on to the fun stuff. So before we dive into learning about the Channel Islands Biosecurity Program, I want to provide an overview of what makes the islands so unique and in turn really vulnerable. The Channel Islands fall within the California Floristic Province, which is one of the 34 biodiversity hotspots in the world. And the definition of a biodiversity hotspot is a region that has an especially high number of endemic species, and it has also already lost at least 70% of its native vegetation. So let's take a closer look at the unique biodiversity of the islands. The islands are home to nearly 150 endemic plants and animals, which means they exist only there and nowhere else in the world, which is just so cool. And I thought it would be fun to highlight some of the species that make these islands truly special. Arguably, one of the most important things to note is that the Channel Islands provide essential nesting and feeding grounds for 99% of seabirds in Southern California. And it's actually home to the only breeding colonies of California brown pelicans in the entire US. Western gulls are the most abundant breeding seabird on the islands, with a population estimated at more than 15,000 individuals. And if you've ever been out to Anacapa Island, you probably got to see a few thousand of these gulls. They are, they kind of take over the island, especially during their breeding season, which is right about now. And they totally cause a ruckus out there, but they are just fascinating creatures to witness. Next, we've got the land birds. There's 10 endemic land bird species that reside within the islands. And the one that I want to point out today is the Santa Cruz Island scrub jay. It's the only single island endemic bird species in North America, and it's currently only found on Santa Cruz Island. And it's a really interesting species because it's a great example of island gigantism. It's actually a third larger than its mainland counterpart, which I think is really cool. So the Channel Islands support over 790 plant taxa, including 22 federally threatened or endangered plant species. Gallium buxifolium has had an impressive recovery since the sheep and pig removal in the early 2000s on Santa Cruz Island. And recently there's been increasing concern regarding deadlier poaching. Not only do we not want poachers stealing this rare and federally listed species, but also looking at it from a biosecurity perspective, there's a threat of new weeds being introduced to the area by the poachers' dirty boots and gear, which could result in even more long-lasting impacts. Okay, there's only 4 native mammals on the Channel Islands, so let's walk through those. The island fox is endemic to 6 of the 8 islands, and each island has its own unique subspecies, which means that they're actually slightly different genetically from each other. And earlier I mentioned that the scrub jay was an example of island gigantism, and inversely, the island fox is an example of island dwarfism. It's a third smaller than its mainland counterpart, the gray fox. The island spotted skunk is endemic to Santa Cruz and Santa Rosa Islands, and it's also much smaller than the skunks that you're used to seeing on the mainland, which are actually striped skunks instead of spotted. The island deer mouse is endemic to all 8 islands, and once again, each one has its own unique subspecies. The western harvest mouse only exists on 3 of the islands, but they're much less common than the deer mouse. And I included the Townsend's big-eared bat on here because it established a maternity roost on Santa Cruz Island in the early 1900s and has become an integral part of the island's ecology. And over a dozen other bat species use the islands as breeding or migratory pathways. And last, but certainly not least, the Channel Islands have one of the most biodiverse marine ecosystems in the world. There are amazing kelp forests that shelter over 1,000 species of plants and animals. And over 27 cetacean species have been sighted in the Santa Barbara Channel, including gray whales, blue whales, humpback whales, orcas, bottlenose dolphins. You name it, we probably got it. So what makes the Channel Islands so biodiverse in that whole region? Well, it's because it's at the intersection of cold currents coming from Alaska and warm currents coming up from the south, which ultimately creates upwelling, which brings tons of nutrients up to the surface, resulting in increased productivity all throughout the food chain. And to really understand the current conditions of the islands, it's important to take a step back in time and look at the human history of the Channel Islands. So for over 10,000 years, the islands have hosted a diverse range of peoples and cultures. In fact, human remains discovered in the 50s on Santa Rosa Island have been dated to more than 13,000 years of age, among the oldest dated human remains in all of North America. And the native population that inhabited the islands for thousands of years are called the Chumash, and they're still closely involved with the activities that take place on the islands. They provide input to make sure that their sensitive cultural resources from many generations are protected. In 1542, Juan Rodriguez Cabrillo reached the islands in search of new lands, and he brought with him 200 years of explorers and traders who visited the islands and unfortunately exploited the resources and introduced diseases that decimated much of the native populations. Chinese abalone fishers, marine mammal hunters and fishermen, ranchers, sport hunters, and the military all left their traces of their use of the islands through the mid to late 1900s. And skip to today, of the 8 islands, 2 are managed by the Navy, 5 are managed by the National Park Service, with Santa Cruz Island being jointly managed by the Nature Conservancy. And then the 8th is Catalina, which has had an interesting history of ownership and management, and it's complicated, so I'm not going to get into it tonight. Trying to go to the, okay. Skipped a slide here, 1 second. Revealing the answers. Okay. Sorry, my computer is slow at the moment. Sorry about that. Okay, let's see if it stays on this page. Nope. Okay, we're gonna try that again. Let me stop sharing for a second. Let me share again. Gotta love technology issues in these COVID times. Thank you for bearing with me. I am hopefully going to have us back on track in a moment. Okay, let me try that again. I hope we can get through this. Okay, there we go. Okay, so with the extensive human presence that the islands have experienced, as you might expect, a lot of non-native mammals were ultimately introduced over time. So some were intentional, like sheep and pigs that provided commercial value, and some were unintentional, like rats and Argentine ants that stowed away on ships or equipment. And over the last 4 decades, the Park Service, the Nature Conservancy, and the Navy and its partners have spent millions of dollars removing the most harmful of these non-native species, but there's still work to be done. So how do we protect the millions of dollars that have been invested over the past decades? Cue the Channel Islands Biosecurity Program. And this is usually the moment when I ask folks to raise their hands if they know what biosecurity is, but since we're virtual, we're gonna try to do a quick poll. Let's see if we can get this to work. I'm going to try to launch it here quickly. So the question is, have you ever heard of or know the meaning of biosecurity? And you've got 3 choices. Yes, I've heard of it and know what it means. Yes, I've heard of it, but I'm not sure what it means. And no, I've never heard of it. And we're going to give it maybe 10 more seconds. I see you guys answering. Thank you. Okay, we're gonna, oh, last answer coming in. Okay, well, this is great. Let's share the results. We actually got an even split all throughout the board. So that's great. And we're all here to learn. So even if you haven't heard of it or you have and you're just not sure, let's dive into it. So Biosecurity means preventing, detecting, and responding to threats from invasive species. And notice that I've got prevention and preventing in capital letters. Keep that in mind. We're going to come back to that in a few slides. And like I mentioned at the beginning, the biosecurity program and my position are jointly funded by the Park, TNC, and the Navy. So my work covers all of the islands that are highlighted here on the map, and also pointed out on the right-hand side. So 6 of the 8 islands, the only 2 that I don't really work closely with at all are Catalina and Clemente. So let's go on to the next slide with my computer. Okay, great. And when we're talking about invasive species today, we're referring to non-native animals, plants, insects, and pathogens that are harmful to native communities. It's good to know that natural processes like wind and water can help spread invasives, and even animals like birds can, help spread seeds or insects by picking them up somewhere and dropping them off elsewhere. But today we're going to be focusing on invasives that are introduced or spread with the help of humans. These all here highlighted on the page are great examples. We've got a few weeds, a few mammals, some insects, and birds too. So it really spreads across all the different taxa. Okay, let's see. So before we dive into how we protect the islands from new invasives, it's important to understand why they're bad in the first place. Invasive species can damage property. For example, rodents can chew through wires, destroying expensive equipment or machinery. Invasives can also introduce new and spread existing diseases that can affect both the environment and humans. One example I want to highlight is the significant decline in island foxes on Catalina Island in the late 90s, which was caused by canine distemper virus. The fox population went from about 1,300 foxes to only 100 in just a few years. So that's kind of, worst case scenario, really. Some invasive species like rats impact the native plants and animals by directly preying on them. Rats were present on Anacapa Island until their eradication or removal in the early 2000s. They preyed really heavily on seabird eggs and chicks, but since the removal of rats, rare seabirds like Scripps murrelet have recovered significantly, which has been really amazing to see. Invasive plants or weeds can contribute to increased fire threat. They can spread widely across the landscape, which increases the amount of fuel that's available for a fire to burn hotter and more frequently. After the devastating fires that we've had in California these last few years, I think we can all agree that preventing the introduction or further spread of weeds is a really high priority. And the last thing I want to mention here is that invasives are usually generalists, which means that they're really great at outcompeting the native species for resources like water, food, and sunlight. Okay. And like I mentioned earlier, the biosecurity program is made up of 3 components: prevention, detection, and response. And I'm going to highlight some of the key activities for each component. The prevention component happens pretty much entirely on the mainland because we're trying to be proactive and stop biosecurity threats from getting out to the islands in the first place. So how do we do that? We inspect all the cargo that gets transported to the islands, making sure that it's free of potential threats such as insects, dirt, mud, or soil that could be harboring seeds or pathogens, any plant material, and any animals, of course. A crucial part of the program is making sure that the biosecurity protocols and requirements are included in any contracts and agreements that we write with partners, so that folks that are coming out to do work on the islands, like students, researchers, and others, know that their gear has to be free of any potential threats, and they need to follow the proper protocols for decontaminating any tools that they've used elsewhere. We also do routine trapping for small mammals on the mainland in areas that are in close proximity, with where cargo is loaded on the boats and planes traveling to the islands so that we're reducing the likelihood of any hitchhikers. We've been working hard to push forward education and outreach for internal audiences like our staff and volunteers, as well as external audiences like visitors. And at the end of my presentation, I'm going to show you a short animated video that we created just this past year to help spread awareness about biosecurity. Next, we have the detection component, which mostly takes place on the islands. We have wildlife cameras at potential introduction points like coves where private boaters anchor and places where cargo is unloaded to monitor for potential invasive mammal introductions. And we recently have installed new wireless cameras that automatically upload the images they capture up to the cloud where they can be accessed from anywhere with an internet connection. And we're also working on a machine learning component that will automatically detect the animals in the photos so that we can more quickly review these thousands of images that we're collecting from the field. So that's a really exciting project that has been a long time coming, and now we have a ton of momentum on. So that's been really cool to get to see kind of come to fruition. We found that eyewitness reports are extremely valuable. So it's really important that we empower our staff and other island users, like students coming out, to speak up if they think that they saw something that shouldn't belong out on the island. We definitely take every report seriously. And we have gotten all sorts of interesting reports. One that comes to mind is somebody that swore that they heard turkeys gobbling out on Santa Cruz Island. So, we sent some folks out to look for tracks to try to, see if we saw any other evidence. And yeah, you never know what's going to end up out there. So we want to make sure that everyone knows that their reports are taken seriously and, addressed appropriately. And there's also routine aerial and ground surveys of the islands to help identify new invasive plant populations that may be recently introduced or established. And last component is response, which is one that we hope to not have to use very often, but preparedness is key. So we write biosecurity plans as a guide for short and long-term goals of the program. We develop standard operating procedures or SOPs and best management practices or BMPs so that we can have standardized protocols across all of the islands. But all that said, the most important part of biosecurity is prevention. So why is it so important? Well, first, invasives, whether they be plants, animals, insects, or pathogens, can be difficult to detect during those initial introduction phases, especially on islands. For example, oftentimes new weeds aren't identified until they've nearly gotten out of control, especially if they're in areas that are not commonly visited and therefore not frequently surveyed. Next, once you're able to detect that a new invasive has been introduced, the response and removal can be really costly. For some plant species like fennel, which usually takes over an area really quickly, you just have to settle with controlling the population because it's not feasible to do a complete removal or eradication. So it's an ongoing cost year after year. And for species where an eradication is feasible, it's not only costly, but the tools that are used like traps or pesticides can also have negative impacts on the native species that are in that area. So again, preventing it from being introduced in the first place is the most effective strategy. And lastly, if you are able to detect it and you're able to get rid of it, the recovery of the native ecosystem can take years to decades to fully bounce back to what it was like before. Take Santa Cruz Island, for example. Feral sheep were removed in the 80s and feral pigs were removed in the early 2000s. And many decades later, we can see amazing recovery in the native plant communities, but we can also see parts of the island that are very much still in the process of returning to their pre-grazing conditions. So it's a pretty long process. But biosecurity is really a team effort, and I'm super excited to announce that we have an awesome opportunity for a CSUCI student to join our team as an intern. I manage and implement the program by myself, so I'm spread very thin. And last year was the first year that we had an intern for a full year, and it was just amazing to see how much more we could accomplish with just the help of one more person. being able to divide and conquer really makes all of the difference. And it was also just really fun to get to have someone to bounce ideas off of and go out into the field together, and, you know, feel proud about the work that we're doing as a team. So I just wanted to dive in a little bit about what that internship opportunity looks like. So we are looking for somebody who's available 20 hours a week. And ideally, we want somebody who is going to be able to stick around for a year. You know, getting somebody trained up takes quite a while. There's a lot, as I'm sure you've gathered from this presentation, there's a lot of information. And, you know, I've been in this position for 5.5 years so far, and I'm still learning things every day. So, you know, there's a lot to learn, but then the other component is that there's also a lot of onboarding that comes with being able to get the necessary like security clearances through the park so that we can give you a park laptop and give you access to the buildings and all of that. So it just takes a while to bring somebody on. And so we don't want to have to be doing that retraining so frequently. So, you know, a year really gives you the ability to get trained up, get comfortable, and, you know, be able to really feel empowered to, you know, be knowledgeable during the internship. We're also looking for somebody who is comfortable public speaking. A lot of different components of the position involve public speaking, whether it's doing an inspection and you know, see something that needs to be addressed. And so you have to approach the park staff or researcher whose gear is, you know, dirty or hasn't been properly decontaminated, approaching them in a friendly way to say, hey, you know, let's find a solution here. We're never trying to, you know, like point fingers or make anyone feel bad about not having followed the biosecurity protocols. It's all about how do we find a solution? How do we work together? And then there's other more formal public speaking opportunities like presentations. Last year with my intern, we did some outreach to the public boating community. And so we held a little virtual workshop with some of the like dive masters and marina managers. And so that was also an opportunity to do public speaking in a more formal sense. We are looking for somebody who is an early riser because some of the activities do take place in the early morning. Those inspections are in the early mornings, as well as the small mammal trapping that we do. So, you know, be honest with yourself. Not everyone's an early riser, but if you are, you might be great for this job. And also somebody who has excellent time management skills. We understand that, you know, we are working with a student, and being a student is a lot of work on its own. So being able to balance school and the internship is something that we are, you know, looking for. We really want to make sure that you're still prioritizing school and, you know, making your deadlines and, you know, not missing class or anything like that. So we want to make sure that we're, yeah, the time is being managed in a responsible way. We are ideally also looking for somebody who is not pursuing other jobs or internships, just because, you know, it does take a lot. 20 hours a week plus school is no small feat. So we want to make sure that it's somebody who can really, you know, commit to this and isn't pursuing other things that may reduce their ability to put forth their best effort with our program. Somebody who can work independently and as a team. So some things you will get trained up on and then kind of, you know, sent to, you know, spread your wings and fly on your own and take it independently. But then other things are very much, you know, team oriented, whether it's working on a document together or brainstorming for a new project. So it's kind of nice that there's stuff that you can do on your own, but then also things that you can work in unison with somebody else, which most likely is me. And, you know, these last two are kind of basic, but I just wanted to throw them out there. Somebody who's organized, obviously really important, just life in general. and then somebody who has basic knowledge of Word, Excel, PowerPoint. Okay, that's the not as fun things, but the benefits. So the pay is $15 an hour, and it's definitely a flexible schedule other than those morning inspections and trappings, which happen on a scheduled basis. And like the trappings are only once a month. The inspections are more on a weekly basis. But besides that, you really do have the flexibility to work on projects whenever is best for you. Again, we understand that you're all students, so we want to work around your school schedule and make sure that you're still, being able to make your classes and make your deadlines while also being able to accomplish the tasks that you have for the internship. Any gas mileage driving, like to and from to the harbor, to Ventura Harbor, where the inspections happen, that would get covered as well. And, while a lot of the work that we do is on the mainland, there's also definitely opportunities to get out to the islands. And not only do you get to go out there for free, but you'll also likely get to explore and visit locations that are not available to the public. So that is super cool. It's also a great networking opportunity. So like I've mentioned, my position is jointly funded by, nonprofit, Department of Interior, Department of Defense, but we have also got all of these other island partners that come to our quarterly biosecurity meetings. And so you're really going to get a lot of exposure with a lot of different people and make a ton of great connections. I will be your number one advocate. I love to, my last intern, I was just singing his praises all the time because he did an amazing job. And it was just really nice to see, when his internship ended, everyone who would go up to him and say, when you're ready to look for a job, when you're finishing up grad school, please don't hesitate to reach out. So it was really nice to see that kind of the arc of that story. You're going to have an opportunity to learn a whole set of different skills and big variety. Given that we're such a small program with, it's a team of one for now, but hopefully it'll be a team of two with an intern. It gives us the ability to kind of be the jack of all trades and do a little bit of everything. So there's some technical writing with reports and plans. There's some field work with trapping and inspections and checking cameras. There's education and outreach with some of the communications components. So there's really a little bit of everything, which I think is really valuable. And that's something that's always, that's something that drew me to the job in the first place, and something that I've continued to really appreciate over the years. And lastly, you get to work with a really fun team. Besides getting to work closely with me, which I like to think that I'm fun. There's also a lot of really other great people on the natural resources team for the park, on the islands team for the Nature Conservancy, even folks out on the Navy site. So, all these people are just really inspiring to be around. They're so passionate about their jobs, and it's really just cool to be around so many people who have so much to share and so much knowledge to impart on you. And yeah, this picture up in the right hand corner is me and my intern from last year. We were kayaking out on Santa Cruz Island during one of our trips, clearly having a blast. And I wanted to highlight some of the potential projects for the internship. These are ones that Russ and I came up with, but they're, these are no they're no particular order, but I just wanted to highlight some of the potential things that you could be working on. So if you're interested in more of a field-based project, there's number one, exploring new detection tools for identifying rodents. So that's really interesting, something that we've been wanting to do for a long time. There's also more on a communication side of things, developing PDF flip cards of high-risk invasive plants to be used by folks that go out to the research station. Also on the communication side, developing educational trifolds for various Channel Islands users. if you like more technical writing or have that skill, we've been wanting to write a biosecurity implementation plan that is specific to the Santa Rosa Island Research Station, so that we're making sure that protocols are effectively communicated to researchers and that biosecurity is well integrated into all of the operations of the research station. If you have more of a creative side to you, maybe you want to create a video explaining biosecurity protocols for researchers, or developing incentives for researchers so that they want to follow the biosecurity protocols. So that's a lot of information, I realize. I will make sure that we get the internship posting out to Genoa so that she can share that with all of you. And if you're interested, please don't hesitate to reach out to me or Russ directly. We're going to be opening the position officially back up soon in the next week or two. But, please feel free to just shoot us an email directly, letting us know that you're interested. And we would love to, learn more about you and see if you're a good fit. Okay, so I'd like to end the presentation with that short animated video that I promised you. Our last intern actually did get to help and provide some input into this video. He joined all of the meetings where we met with the video designer. And this has just been a really cool project to see, us just brainstorming back and forth, putting ideas on paper, and then getting to see it come to life like this was amazing. So I am going to press play. Okay. Oh. All right. So with that, yeah, thank you all so much again for having me here. I really appreciate it. And I will open it up for questions now.
I have a quick question for you, Julia. When or if, is there a deadline for the internships opportunity for them to apply?
Good question. I wish that Russ was still around. I think we'll leave it open for, a couple weeks, but we want to try to get as many applicants as we can so that we have a good pool to choose from. But once I have that deadline, I'll include that in the information that I send you with the announcement.
Great. That sounds awesome. From the chat, we have, is any major welcome to apply for the internship?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, we are open to any major. I think, initially maybe we're thinking somebody from the environmental science department, but if you are from a different department and, everything that I mentioned just sounded like something that you're really interested in, definitely don't hesitate to apply.
And if folks were looking for a simple volunteer opportunity where they could maybe help out in this area, is there any particular organization that you might recommend?
That is a great question. And so we actually do have a volunteer opportunity as well, which is helping review the images from our wildlife cameras. So those can be really fun. You can see all sorts of, funny interactions with the foxes and the skunks, and it's really interesting, and it would actually, help this next phase of the machine learning software. So it's, if you're interested in volunteering and reviewing images from the wildlife cameras, please just, shoot me an email at that address there on the slide, and we will get you set up.
Awesome. And then one other question from the chat here. Are you the first biosecurity employee for Channel Islands National Parks?
Yeah, so this is a unique position that was created by the park, TNC, and the Navy. They all came together. They realized that it was a priority for all of them, but individually, none of them had enough funding. So there was one person who preceded me. She was in the position for a short period of time. And then, since I think September 2016, when I joined, I've been, leading and managing the program since.
Very cool. Awesome. Does anybody else have any other questions that you'd like to pose? All right. Well, in that case, I'm going to let you go. I so appreciate you being here. I think this was probably so far my favorite event. It was so great learning so much about the islands, the history on top of the biosecurity aspect to it. It was just very, very cool. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Anytime. All right, folks, our next one will be in April. And if you have any friends who you think would be interested in knowing anything about biosecurity, I highly recommend that you share our YouTube link with them. So thank you all for coming out.
Awesome. Thank you.
See you later.
Bye.